Support your immune system with Airborne's most complete immune support formula yet. Airborne's delicious effervescent tablets are packed with 7 powerful ingredients to fill the holes your immune system may have, so that you can enjoy those unmissable moments in your life. Learn more at airbornecomplete.com. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Oh my God, it's the coolest thing ever. Hey guys, have you heard of Goldbelly? Well, check this out. It's this amazing site where they ship the most iconic, famous foods from restaurants across the country, anywhere nationwide. I've never found a more perfect gift than food. They ship Chicago deep dish pizza, New York bagels, Maine lobster rolls, and even Ina Garten's famous cakes. Seriously. So if you're looking for a gift for the food lover in your life, head to goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code GIFT.
Hello, this is Simon Brew. I'm the editor of Film Stories magazine, and a very warm welcome to a very special episode of the Film Stories podcast.
Come with me.
And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
And movies that had stories.
That the story just sucks them in.
This is just the beginning.
Stories. We would be honored if you would join us.
Hello, and a very warm welcome to Film Stories with Simon Brew. I am Simon Brew, as always. That's absolutely everything you need to know about me. The aim of the podcast, though, well, it's given away in the title. I'm here to talk of the stories of films, and I tend to talk about development stories, marketing stories, release stories, production stories, all those ingredients, really, that go towards making the films that we know and sometimes love. Just that, the films that we know and sometimes love. The films I tend to cover on this podcast, they lean more towards the mainstream than anything else. They're films I'm interested in or invested in to some degree. Try not to do snark. I try not to punch down. This podcast is a celebration of cinema and a real appreciation of just how hard it is to get a film off the ground. What you've happened upon here is one of my occasional special episodes of the podcast where I bring in a filmmaker to talk about their latest release or their body of work. You get more, well, you get a bit of both, really. That I'm delighted to be joined for this episode of Film Stories by Ishana Night Shyamalan, the writer and director of the brand new supernatural horror film The Watched. It's called The Watchers outside of the UK. It's called The Watched in the UK, starring Dakota Fanning, Georgina Campbell, Oliver Finnegan, amongst its ensemble. And it's released in UK cinemas on the 7th of June 2024. This conversation then, I mean, we primarily focus on that particular film. I also mention at one point her father, who is M. Night Shyamalan, and there is a TV programme that just comes up during the conversation as well, which is Servant, on which Ishana Night Shyamalan wrote 10 episodes, directed 6 episodes as well. So we talk about that a little bit too. But I think that's actually all the setup you need for this particular conversation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a clip from the trailer from the film, and the other side of that, you'll hear my chat with Ishana Night Shyamalan.
I'm going out tonight. Try not to die. Try not to die. Try not to die. I thought you couldn't talk.
Young woman with a drink in her hand. She liked to listen to rock and roll. She moves with the music.
Don't look at me like that. It's just something I do sometimes.
Never gets old. It's the only thing that never gets
Hello? I need some help.
So that was a clip from The Watched, and I'm delighted to be joined by its writer and director for this podcast special episode. It is Ishana Night Shyamalan, which I think I've said perfectly.
You did. You killed it.
Excellent. Right. Well, that was it then. We're all done. I mean, it sounds like the most basic, boring question, but this is your feature directorial debut.
Yeah.
What's this bit like? What's the bit like? You've finished it. Everyone's going to see it in like about what? 10 days or something like that. What's this middle bit like?
It's so incredibly odd to me. It's like really, I think weirdly the part of the process that I was the least equipped for I think for me, I was like prepped for what the experience of preparing for a movie is like, and what the shoot might be like, and what the post process. I had kind of like some kind of feeling of that, and some thought had gone to that. But this is really like a whole element that I just had no idea what it would feel like, and it's quite wild. I'm just trying to kind of be present in it all, and kind of learn as I go.
But you had here in the UK last night a big premiere as well. I mean, can you enjoy that? Are you, even though like the film isn't out technically in the world, can you appreciate the big moments like that?
It was definitely shocking. I think I felt quite like dissociated the whole time. And it was it was like I felt quite unemotional until the very end of the night. And then I was like, whoa, okay, this is kind of crazy. So it is those moments of like being sobered in it all, and sort of realizing, I think, what's happening.
Yeah, I mean, it struck me there's one person in this conversation who will ever have a world premiere, a big premiere at Leicester Square, and it's not me. So, I mean, fair dues to you straight up on that.
Thank you.
So, can I go back at the point where you kind of got a passion for making film yourself? Because it's a nice thing, really. There's not a lot of interviews out there with you or anything like that. And I read that you trained as a ballerina. I think that's about all I've got. And then so beautifully, I get to shut up now. And can you tell us where you got the spark, where you got the passion for it?
Yeah, I mean, I think I've always sort of like moved through different art forms. So sort of ballet was one of them, piano, kind of like drawing and painting, making clothes. I've like tried on all these different forms of art, and so enjoyed all of those things, and kind of found myself at each of those stages with those different art forms. And it just sort of came time, I think, to like get serious about being an adult and kind of choosing one. And I didn't want to sacrifice any of those passions.
Yeah.
And it sort of felt to me that filmmaking could allow me to touch all of those loves and just like be completely fluid and exploratory. Felt like a wonderful form to play in, and that was kind of around 16 or so, and then I just started trying it and sort of fell in love with I think the thrill of filmmaking.
Have you always been a film fan? I know with you, I mean, acknowledging your surname, people would expect that, but conversely, it's just like I don't take that for granted. Has that been always one of your core ways of enjoying a story?
Absolutely. I think for whatever reason, I always feel kind of deeply connected to movies. I was like a very emotional kid and would always kind of cry during movies, like be sobbing during movies, and be very afraid. And so, yeah, it's just like always been something that I think the format of having a big visual and a sound design, for whatever reason, like that gets me. So
yeah.
Yeah.
I want you to be telling me now you grew up sobbing through films like The Rock or something like that. That would just be amazing now. Completely.
Yeah, I used to cry at everything. I was,
No, I'm all fine. So can you then, I went into this film as an avid avoider of film trailers, because I'm a boring old fart now, and I've had trailers just spoil so many things for me over the years. So I never quite know what I'm going to get. So this is why I'm going to ask you to do this bit, if that's all right. Can you introduce as much of the film to us as you're comfortable with us knowing before we go to see it?
I mean, I think what I would say is kind of the kind of setup of the movie, which is a young woman in Ireland who stumbles across this massive woodland and sort of finds herself lost in it. And very quickly, she kind of encounters a structure in the middle of the wood and these three odd characters, and is told to kind of come in there, and they shut the door, and she's told that she's being watched by creatures through this window, this creature called the Watchers. And so the journey of the movie is very much just that, and kind of discovering what is real, what's not real, and moving through your own kind of psychological torture, I think.
Psychological torture. I think that's the thing to go for. I mean, this listeners may not know, this was a book. beforehand,
Yes.
but a very recent book as well. I didn't realize it had only been published in 2021. So
Yeah.
presumably that was your first your first crossing of it was with the book. Can you talk about that a little bit, how it came into your life?
Yeah, it was brought to us via a producer who had read the book and thought there was something really compelling in there. And I just kind of like read it with no expectation and no knowledge of what the story was. And it just so oddly was like exactly the type of tone and world that I was interested in playing with. It was completely scary, completely unexpected, and blossoms into this just like massive, massive thing. And so it was just like as a reader, one of those moments where you kind of move through something really quickly and it's just has you, it holds you in that way. So it's kind of just a wonderful kind of fresh novel, and it's I Am Shine's first novel. So
Yeah.
it was quite cool that like it was like another artist kind of beginning this immense journey, and it felt very aligned with me.
Well, you said earlier on that one of your earlier passions was drawing and painting. I do wonder if you come to the end of something like this and you do think, I could draw this. You know, a strange question perhaps, but I just wonder if you can see it that visually.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, my like visual imagination is always at the forefront of how I exist. I think it definitely is. Like, when I read the book, I had a very strong sense. Like, when I'm reading the description, I know what I'm seeing, and it slightly differs from the book, but I have that, and I'm seeing it play out in my mind. So art forms like drawing and painting, I think, though I'm not that technically skilled in that particular art form, I think helps me kind of connect those ideas with kind of tactile reality. So I really enjoy like using that as just a way of kind of connecting like, the real with the unreal, and it just helps me kind of to have multiple outlets, I think.
One of the things that perhaps doesn't come across in an audio podcast is how bursting with spark your eyes were as you were describing just kind of that response. I mean, it's almost like a kid in a candy store moment.
Oh my gosh,
but
thanks.
but I mean, because I think you'd said that you were looking for a first directorial, a first feature to direct. Was it so? Did you take the book with that in mind, or are you just reading and hoping for the eureka moment?
I was sort of in the phase where I was knowing I wanted to move into a feature world and had a couple ideas that I was starting to outline. And it was brought to me, I guess, with that intention, but I didn't really think about it and just sort of read it. And I found like all the ideas that I was thinking of before, which I'm still kind of playing with some of those ideas, were very much kind of thinking about like, oh, how is this first feature going to be perceived? And is this the right thing? And is this like edgy enough and big enough? And when I read A.M. Shine's book, like all of those thoughts just kind of dissipated, and the passion for this world that he had created was the only thing that mattered to me. So I felt like that was the right place to create out of, just that sort of like feeling of duende in it, and not thinking too much and just going somewhere with it.
And so before you found it, you were kind of feeling the pressure of what you in your head had the expectation of what a first feature was supposed to be. Is that,
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth. Is that what you're saying? So,
I think absolutely. I think just knowing that it was sort of like the one shot I have at like it's establishing and sort of entering this art form that I wanted to be a part of. The stakes felt very, very high for me. And I was doing a lot of overthinking that and trying to be pragmatic about it. And I think at a certain point, it's like you have to abandon that pragmatism and just start feeling things. And I think that's what the book did for me.
oh, it's interesting because I mean, one of the things you said in there was your first feature has to be edgy and has to be all of those things. And actually, the first feature that you've made, it's totally just shifted just slightly in the different direction. It's got some of those ingredients in there, but it doesn't sound like it was quite what you initially perceived in your head.
No, I thought I was going to do something that was like very daring and bold and like muscular and fast paced. And I have always I always start there, like thinking that that's me and thinking that it's like my opportunity to kind of show how brash I am, but I really am not like that. I think, the things that I actually am interested in, the way I live my life, is a bit more like kind of slow and soft in certain ways. So that's been like a continual part of each part of this film process, is where I go too hard into like what I think I am as an artist, and then return to what I actually am, and kind of become okay with that.
Can I then ask a question as a boring middle-aged white guy sat in the middle of the UK, which is because I read the press notes for this, and there was something that you put in there that really struck me, and I'm badly paraphrasing it, which is why I want to put it to your words. In that, as a young woman directing a first feature, if there's a different kind of lens and a different kind of pressure than if I was directing a first feature, and if that in any way informed your choice, or if you feel that throughout the making of it. And so I'm putting that as vague as possible, because I don't want my inflection on that at all.
Yeah, I mean, I think that particular thought was about the kind of process of particularly like being on set, and all of the kind of conviction that you need to accomplish a film, I think. So it was sort of in regards to that, sort of like grappling with how do I stay in my feminine and kind of be strong in that way, where it's like those ideas are very much at odds with each other, at least like what we're told is femininity. But I think in the general sense, I sort of like am always afraid of being too soft or being too emotional. I think that sort of like oddly makes me less valid or something, but I am very soft and emotional, and I think there's a lot of that in this movie as well. So that was like my big fear going into it, is am I gonna be too kind of is gonna be too kind of cringy or something, or it's just like, oh, this girl is feeling some stuff, I don't know. But it just had to kind of be truthful to, I think, the things I was dealing with, and it's like shown me, I guess, who I am, I suppose.
How important then in just giving yourself that self-belief, which it's incredible what you've done. How important then was Servant? Because I'm not particularly au fait with the TV show. That in my defense, there's so much TV, I've got no chance at all.
It's so hard to,
But I was reading the first episode that you directed on it, which I think is one called Pizza in season 2. And just looking at that from the outside, looking in, that kind of looked like quite a challenging thing to do. I mean, just not, I'm loath to use the words run-of-a-mill episode, but there was something just a little bit different about that. How important was that to you in your story?
Well, I think I had kind of dipped my toe in sort of making film stuff before, which was mostly made like 3 short films in college, and that was a very low stakes thing. It was like my friends in my backyard, and cameras that we sort of rented from the local shop. So I had some general knowledge of like what to do, but really not in an environment where there were professional stakes. And it kind of came, it was like very much something I didn't feel ready for at all. I was like, I'm just totally not ready to do this real thing. But I found, that just by sort of like being as truthful about the things that I was interested in, it's like kind of the sort of tuning into your own taste, that I could kind of do it. And so like that episode I watch back and I can't watch it because it's just like so sort of rudimentary to me in the way that I directed it. But each of those episodes, I think, like moved more and more. I was able to sort of practice precision and hone in on how to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish, and kind of like found, I think, my language through all those various episodes that I directed.
It sounds a mildly pretentious question, but damn it, I'm going to go for it anyway. But is there a point where you trust your truth? Because you've used truthfulness a few times in there, and I think we talk ourselves out of what we perceive to be true a lot of the time. Was there a point that you just thought, no, I do trust it, I do know what I'm talking about? Yeah,
I mean, I think art making, or maybe just life in general, is very much about that sort of flow of like, there are moments when I feel so confident. I'm like, I know exactly what I want. I'm right. I'm smart. I'm right. And then moments where I feel completely the opposite of that. And I'm just like, how could I don't even remember what it felt like to be confident or to be assured. And the kind of like drastic difference between those two headspaces always puzzles me so much, like how you can go from one pole to the other. And art is something I think that puts that at the forefront and like makes you have to be really in tune to which headspace you're in. So it's an interesting thing. I think we have the ability, like for me, I think even just where we're at in the world and politics and certain things, I'm like, we all have the ability to delude ourselves in these very, very intense ways. And that's very scary to me, that like you can believe a lie you tell yourself so much if you're not constantly questioning. So I just try to be kind of as involved in whatever my internal dialogue is as much as possible.
I talked to quite a few directors who have shot on location, and whenever they do a feature, they try and get a location as far away from someone paying the bill as possible. So you went to Ireland to shoot this, which where the AM shot's from, I believe, as well. Yeah. Yeah. And Ireland is becoming a little bit of a home for horror movies at the moment. We've had Abigail shot in Cocaine Bear in there as well. How important was it geographically to go to Ireland, both in terms of what it brought to the film and what you were able to leave behind?
I think in terms of the concept of the story, there was really no question. Yeah. It felt so kind of quintessentially Irish that I was like, I don't kind of like that approach of sort of generalizing a cultural experience, which I think is what happens a lot, that we sort of like take what we like from a certain culture and just like make it blasé and make it everyone. And there needs to be a universality about the storytelling, but I thought like as much as of that kind of authentic flavors you can get is the thing that sort of makes it specific and makes you interested in watching it. I think in great part that is the intrigue of the movie, is that you get to go see Ireland through the movie. So it was very down for that part of the process. And then I think for me, just creatively, I liked sort of going someplace unknown to me, going someplace that I could just kind of be and learn and yeah, so it was all quite compelling to me.
Bloody cold though, right?
Yeah, it wasn't bad. We were in the summer. It was pretty lovely. So did get cold in the winter though.
I read just some of what you've talked about working with Thirdy and Murphy. I think I've pronounced their name correctly. And about at the point where you knew this was going to happen, and you are going to be making your first feature film, and 30 of the production designer, right? So just conceiving this before you stepped onto the set for the first time, did you enjoy that particular process? I mean, from what I was reading, it just seemed one of the most joyful parts of it.
Yeah, I mean, that I think is like the thing that I just could do without stopping forever. Is like, I love talking and thinking about production design in film school. Like that was what I was doing mostly, was production designing and like working on art teams and things like that. I just love the visual element of it. It feels so rich and there's so much to play with there. So that was like, he was the first person I brought on board for this movie, because I was like, I want to start talking about this immediately. I have so many thoughts, and he's just like brilliant at making kind of wild ideas come to life, and he's like kind of a master of builds and location. So it just felt like we were talking for months and months and exchanging images and talking about shapes, and that was just like totally one of the most blissful elements of the movie, and I think allows it to have this really rich kind of visual atmosphere.
Also, just that document they sent me, a whole bunch of conversations in there. There's someone in there, M. Night Shyamalan, who you may have heard of, who talks about if he'd got the same material, he'd have done something different with it. And I thought that was really, really, really interesting. So the conversation in terms of your creative response to this piece of work and your vision for it, what kind of creative chats were you having? Because I mean, as you've said, clearly this was you. You know, this was you, and the courage of putting your view forward.
I mean, I think with my dad, most of the conversations were about a sort of theoretical approach. They were less
Yeah.
so about the creative choices. He very much, I think, like entrusted me and knew that I wouldn't compromise on those creative visions. So it was mostly about how, like, as a human being,
Yeah.
to move through this process and this art form in a way that was like both sustainable and to get the best product. It was very much like kind of business chats in that way. Like, how do
Yeah.
you, yeah, as a business person, like kind of accomplish the greatest result there? So we've had lots of kind of conversations in that way about how to think about things, how to, yeah, how to kind of watch things, and it's more the theoretical approach to filmmaking.
Well, watching, of course, being a central theme of this, and one of the, I, I'm having to make my questions really vague because I don't want to spoil it for
Yeah.
anyone who's not seen it. So forgive me if I'm not going very story rich on it. But one of the things I always find interesting talking, particularly to first time directors, is the edit. Even if you've edited television before, even if you've edited like an hour of narrative or shorts, something like that,
Right.
the edit of a feature film, they tell me, is generally, it's their words, not mine, quite terrifying. And one of the things, the reason I just picked up on what you're saying about what is you put a lot of space in here. You trust us as an audience. You don't treat us as an audience as dim. Whereas if you'd have like contracted, I'm not suggesting that's happened before, but if you'd have contracted the running time down by a half, you may have had to take some of that out. Can you take me into like day 3 of your edit room? When and what you're looking at and what your human emotions are as you look at it?
Well, it's so interesting. I think the edit process for me was really the most kind of unexpected and maybe challenging part. I think because that I think is the moment where you really realize you're not in control, and there's basically a whole other kind of creation process that has to happen in the edit. And so I came into it very much with like a strong idea of how the movie was going to be cut. I shot it that way, where I knew where each shot was going to cut in and cut out. So I would only shoot like a partial bit of dialogue because I was like, I don't want to even allow the opportunity to have it cut in a different way. I'm like, I know I'm cutting into this shot, then this one, then this one, and kind of came in with that approach. And it just was like pretty immediately not that. I think it was it started to reveal itself, like where I had taken missteps or where I hadn't gone hard enough. It became like so obvious, all those things that I had wished I had done differently. And then there was kind of that like humbling moment of, okay, with the material that we have, what is the movie? And the journey of the edit was that, is like listening to the material and moving forward. Yeah, and I was like, I was reading this book during the shoot that basically was saying like, your material that you shoot on set is dead. It's not an alive thing, and it only becomes alive when you start cutting it together. It's just dead material. And so that was really interesting to me, that there's basically like a birth that's happening in the edit process, and it takes a lot of patience and listening and humility, I think, to get there.
And so you weren't one of these people who had an 8-hour first cut and you're in floods of tears looking at it and just wanting to just go to the pub or something like that. You always...
definitely. I mean, I feel that every time I watch a first cut, I'm like, I'm literally horrible at this, so I should stop now. But I think that's a common theme in every filmmaker I talk to. I'm like, everyone, the first cut is just brutal.
Yeah. So tell me then about the second cut. No, because when you find more of your confidence in not in the material so much, but in the film, what's different between cut 1 and 2? I assume you did lots of cuts, but between those two, the big building block, if you like.
I mean, I think there was sort of the first, like my first kind of stage of the director's cut was about getting it to what I thought my expectations were. So it was about like shaping the film into what I had thought I was aiming for at the beginning. And then I think we started to experiment from there. It was like, well, maybe there's a better way to do this or structure this piece, and maybe there's too much weight here. So it was like starting to listen a little bit more in that second cut. and then just continuing, I think, down that journey of like, okay, you chisel a little bit away and a little bit away, and it becomes something else, and you have to step back and look at that and observe it and see what that wants to be. So it was like that over and over and over again. And then I think like later in the editing process, starting to integrate other voices, other people that are also looking at that same marble structure, and yeah, trying to navigate and stay tuned in, I think, to what it wants to be the whole time.
I try and go down the credits and just pick someone out and just have a conversation about them. And the person I picked on your film, if it's okay, is Abel Korzeniowski, I believe.
Oh my God. Just an epic person to pick.
well, quite, because I watched Emily, and Emily
Yeah.
is a very windy outdoor film. I mean,
Yes.
I mean that, and then I watched Till like fairly close together.
Mm.
Can you tell me the impact of their music on their film and why you chose them?
Yeah, well, so Abel is someone, like I'm still in shock that he did this movie. I listen to like a lot of film scores, and his just I'm obsessed with them. I think like the Nocturnal Animals score in particular is one that it's like the cover of my scores playlist is a frame from Nocturnal Animals because I love that score so much. But he has this very kind of like classical orchestral thing going on. And I find his works to be like deeply emotional. So I thought that could be a very interesting kind of juxtaposition. I didn't want this to be like a kind of modern classic in the way where you have sort of like synth elements and a more droney thing. I wanted it to be like big and fairy tale and feel very classical. So I just like went out on a limb and sort of asked if he'd be interested, and he connected to the script, and it was so wonderful. He's created just like such an explosive big score for this. I think it's one of the most beautiful elements of the film. He's so cool. He's just like a genius and very, very old school, and I love it.
So our time is almost up, and I just want to draw the contrast again that one of us in this conversation has just directed their first feature film that they wrote and they directed. It opens up with a big studio logo at the start of it, and it's got all the majesty of a feature film. How do you feel?
Thank you. Well, that's so kind. Yeah, I mean, it's just I feel so grateful. This is a crazy life I think we get to live as filmmakers. It's such a beautiful art form, and it's basically just playing make-believe for your life. So I don't know anything that's better than that.
That's wonderful. Ishana Night Shyamalan, thank you. And I hope I pronounced it correctly twice now. Thank you so much for your time, and congratulations on your film.
Thank you. It was so good to chat.
And that was my conversation with Ishana Night Shyamalan. The Watched is in UK cinemas on the 7th of June 2024, which is just as this podcast episode is being released into the world. And that brings me to the end too of this podcast episode. You can find more from me if you really want to on Twitter and Blue Sky at Simon Brew. You can find more on the Film Stories Project at Film Stories on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. It would help if I could find the Blue Sky password at the moment. Let's just gloss over that. You can see me live in Birmingham on the 19th of June 2024. If you go to macbirmingham.co.uk, search for Movie Geek Live, you will find a listing for the show there. If you go to filmstories.co.uk, that is our updated website, every weekday updated website with movie news, features, reviews, TV, games, all sorts on there. We're trying to do a clickbait-free entertainment website. You can also find our shop at store.filmstories.co.uk, where we do print magazines and Blu-rays that we make ourselves. Imagine that, putting physical products out into the world. We don't use AI or anything either. We actually do these things the long way round, because either A, we're traditionalists, or B, we're idiots. Either way, it's at store.filmstories.co.uk. But after all those plugs, I will leave you in peace. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Do like and subscribe if you don't mind. Always helps. Independent podcasts like this. Main thing is you look after yourselves. You take care. I will be back soon with your regular episode of Film Stories. Take care. Bye-bye.